In the annals of history, where myth and reality blur, lies the story of Troy. A tale so epic, it has captivated the imaginations of millions throughout the ages. But what if I told you that beyond the realms of myth, the city of Troy was real? Its ruins a testament to a saga that once unfolded. Today, we embark on a journey back in time to uncover the truth behind the legend. From the poetic verses of Homer to the groundbreaking discovery that brought Troy into the realm of history, we'll explore this ancient city's incredible story. Join me as we unravel the layers of time to reveal the secrets of Troy. Our story begins in the realm of epic poetry, where the ancient city of Troy, or Ilios, played center stage in one of the most legendary conflicts of antiquity, the Trojan War. The Trojan War is a story that has transcended time and remains one of the most captivating tales from ancient mythology. It's a saga of love, betrayal, heroism, and divine intervention, immortalized by poets and storytellers of ancient Greece. The Trojan War's most famous accounts come to us from the timeless works of Homer, an epic poet whose works the Illiad and the Odyssey have stood as pillars of Western literature. The Iliad focuses on a brief period towards the end of the Siege of Troy, offering insight into the characters, the gods, and the battles that defined the war. Another crucial source is the Aeneid by Virgil, a Roman poet, which, while centered on Aeneas' journey post-Troy, also reflects on the war's impacts. Together, these epic poems, supplemented by fragments of other ancient texts, form a mosaic of the Trojan War, rich in heroism, tragedy, and the timeless quest for glory and honor. They blend the threads of history and myth into a narrative of such compelling grandeur that it continues to resonate through the ages. Picture an extraordinary celebration, the marriage of Peleus, a heroic mortal king, to Thetis, a sea nymph known for her stunning beauty. This remarkable union was set to be remembered not for the joy it spread, but for the conflict it would ignite. The gods themselves were in attendance, highlighting the wedding's grandeur. However, as the celebrations took place under the gaze of Mount Olympus, an uninvited guest with chaotic intentions hid in the shadows. Eris, the goddess of discord, not welcome at the celebration, decided to seek revenge in a way that matched her cunning. She took a golden apple and engraved "To the fairest" on it before tossing it into the crowd of divine attendees. The apple's radiance immediately captured the attention of three goddesses: Hera, the queen of the gods; Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare; and Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Each, believing herself to be the rightful recipient, laid claim to the apple. And so, the stage was set for a celestial contest that would entangle both gods and men. The task of judgment fell to Paris, a prince by birth, but a shepherd by circumstance, who spent his days in the pastoral tranquility of Mount Ida, a world away from the opulence of his royal lineage in Troy. Paris's life began under ominous circumstances, marked by a prophecy that foretold his role in the downfall of Troy. Fearing the ruin that their newborn son was destined to bring, Queen Hecuba and King Priam decided to abandon him to prevent the prophecy from coming true. It was initially commanded by Priam that Paris should be killed to avoid the dire future foretold. However, the servant tasked with this grim duty couldn't bring himself to commit the act. Instead, he left Paris on Mount Ida, where a shepherd found him. The shepherd, unaware of the infant's royal lineage, raised Paris as his own. Paris grew up among the flocks and fields, his royal identity obscured by the guise of a shepherd's simplicity. Paris being selected to judge this contest was not a simple matter of assessing beauty. It was a decision fraught with the potential for divine blessing or ire. Each goddess sought to sway Paris with offers beyond mortal ken. Hera promised power and kingship over all men. Athena offered unmatched wisdom and skill in battle. And Aphrodite, with a smile that could unravel the threads of fate, promised the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman on earth. However, Helen was already the queen of Sparta. Before Helen became the wife to Menelaus, king of Sparta, she was already a figure of renown in ancient Greek mythology, celebrated for her unparalleled beauty. Helen was the daughter of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Leda, the queen of Sparta, making her a demigoddess. According to myth, Zeus visited Leda in the form of a swan, and from this union, Helen was born, alongside her siblings Castor, Pollux, and Clytemnestra from 2 eggs. Helen's beauty was famed throughout Greece from her youth, making her a highly sought-after bride among Greek nobility. Her hand in marriage was contested by numerous suitors, each a prince or hero in his own right. To manage the competition and potential conflict her choice might provoke, Helen's foster father, Tyndareus, who was often considered her mortal father, required all her suitors to swear an oath. This oath of Tyndareus bound them to accept Helen's choice of husband peacefully, and all had vowed to defend and support the chosen husband of Helen against any wrong done to him regarding his marriage. Helen's marriage to Menelaus was not just a personal union, but a political one, strengthening Menelaus' claim to the throne of Sparta and intertwining Helen's fate with the future of not just Sparta, but all of Greece. This union, however, was about to be tested by the whims of fate and the caprices of the gods. In the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, where the divine often intercedes in the realm of mortals, the stage was set for an event that would ignite one of the most famous conflicts in ancient lore. Paris found himself at the heart of this celestial controversy, tasked with the impossible decision of choosing the fairest among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Paris found himself seduced by the promise of the most beautiful woman in the world as his wife. Swayed more by lust than by any aspirations for power or valor, Paris chose Aphrodite as the fairest, bestowing upon her the coveted apple. This choice stoked the flames of discord both among the gods and between the realms of the divine and the mortal. Following Aphrodite's promise, Paris set sail for Sparta, the realm of King Menelaus and his wife Helen, known across the lands for her unparalleled beauty. Upon his arrival, Paris was received as a guest, accorded the sacred hospitality that was customary at the time. It was during this visit, under the influence of Aphrodite's power, that Paris and Helen succumbed to their desires, initiating an affair that would become legendary. When Paris departed Sparta, he did not leave alone. Helen, either compelled by love or the will of the gods, fled with him, setting off to Troy. This act of elopement was not merely a personal scandal, but a cataclysmic event that breached the sanctity of Xenia, the ancient Greek code of hospitality, and dishonored Menelaus, sparking a call for retribution that would resonate throughout Greece. When Paris arrived in Troy with Helen, his father, King Priam, welcomed him with open arms. But his brother, Prince Hector, and sister Cassandra were furious with their brother. For Hector knew that Paris's actions would bring war to Troy, and Cassandra, with her gifts of prophecy, knew that Paris's actions would bring complete devastation to the city. Upon Menelaus' solemn return to Sparta, having paid his respects at a funeral in Crete, he was enraged and dishonored to learn his wife had been abducted. Menelaus turned to his brother Agamemnon to help him bring his wife home. Agamemnon, the revered king of Mycenae, wielded immense influence over the Greek states, and together they invoked the oath of Tyndareus. This breach of trust and violation of hospitality catalyzed a collective response from the Greeks. The abduction did not just ignite Menelaus' fury, it rallied a pan-Hellenic alliance against Troy, setting the stage for what would become one of the most legendary conflicts in history. This conflict, more than any other, is defined by its characters, each a legend in their own right, whose deeds have been sung by poets for millennia. On the side of the Achaeans, or the Greeks, stands men of unparalleled valor and complexity, from King Agamemnon, Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, and Nestor, among others. Odysseus, the esteemed king of Ithaca, stood out as the epitome of wisdom among the Greeks. Despite his significant influence and respect, he harbored a deep reluctance to engage in war, valuing the lives of his men above all. When Agamemnon's envoys arrived to conscript him for the war, Odysseus resorted to feigning madness in a bid to evade the draft. However, his clever ruse was eventually uncovered by Agamemnon's astute representatives. Confronted with this, Odysseus honored his obligation and agreed to fight alongside Menelaus against Troy. Renowned as the man of twists and turns, Odysseus had the ability to concoct innovative plans, and his compelling oratory made his contributions as crucial to the Greek cause as the bravery and strength of any warrior on the battlefield. Leading the Achaean forces is Menelaus' brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. His presence commands attention, a figure both imposing in authority and ambitious in scope. Agamemnon presided over the mightiest of the Greek realms, with Mycenae celebrated not only for its unparalleled wealth, but also for boasting the largest and most formidable army among the Greek city-states. His leadership, marked by an unwavering command, carries the weight of a kingdom renowned for its military and economic supremacy. However, Agamemnon's rule is not without its flaws. His leadership, while decisive, is often clouded by a deep-seated pride and the ethical dilemmas that accompany the horrors of war. Prior to the conflict, Agamemnon's dominion was characterized by both prosperity and strife, reflecting a tenure that balanced on the sharp edge of glory and controversy. His decisions, influenced by a complex interplay of personal ambition and the burdens of kingship, set the stage for the narrative that would unfold on the shores of Troy. Nestor, the venerable king of Pylos, stands as the eldest among the Greek kings, a testament to both his longevity and wisdom. His life, extended across 3 generations by the grace of Apollo, is a tapestry of experience and insight, unparalleled in the annals of Greek heroes. Nestor's longevity is not merely a function of time, but a divine favor, reflecting a life lived under the auspices of the gods themselves. Before the war, Nestor's journeys had taken him far and wide, most notably alongside the legendary Heracles, participating in adventures that would be etched in the mythos of Greece for eternity. These experiences, combined with his innate wisdom, made him a reservoir of guidance and counsel. As the conflict with Troy loomed on the horizon, Nestor's role transcended that of a warrior. He became a mentor, offering his vast knowledge and the wisdom of ages to Menelaus and the Achaean leaders. His advice was not just strategic, but moral, guiding the younger kings through the complex ethical landscape of war. Diomedes, the youthful monarch of Argos, emerges as the most junior among the Greek kings, yet holds a stature second only to the mighty realm of Mycenae. His ascendancy to the throne brought not just a new vigor to Argos, but also a period of unprecedented prosperity and stability, marking him as a ruler of both wisdom and valor. Under Diomedes' reign, Argos flourished, its coffers filled and its people living in a state of peace and prosperity rarely seen. This golden era was attributed not just to the fertile lands or favorable trades, but significantly to Diomedes' astute political acumen. His skill in governance, diplomacy, and strategy enabled Argos to navigate the complex political landscapes of the time, securing alliances and deterring conflicts with a blend of cunning and foresight. Beyond his political savvy, Diomedes was also a favored mortal of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare. This divine favor bestowed upon him not only enhanced his prowess in battle, but also sharpened his intellect, making him a formidable opponent both on the field and in the corridors of power. Athena's guidance was said to have been instrumental in his numerous victories and the strategic decisions that propelled Argos to its zenith. Diomedes' contributions to the Greek cause in the Trojan War were marked by his youthful energy and innovative tactics. His courage and strategic genius, coupled with Athena's backing, made him one of the key figures in the Greek offensive against Troy. His actions on the battlefield were characterized by a blend of bravery and brilliance, earning him a place among the most revered heroes of the Greek saga. We now turn our attention to the valiant warriors who formed the backbone of the Greek forces in the Trojan War. Achilles, the prince of Phthia, emerged from a lineage that intertwined the mortal and the divine. His father, King Peleus, and his mother, Thetis, a sea nymph, destined him for a life shadowed by prophecy. This prophecy foretold two paths: a long but obscure life, or a brief existence marked by unparalleled heroism. In her quest to safeguard her son's legacy, Thetis sought to make Achilles invincible by immersing him in the mystical waters of the river Styx. Clutching him by his heel, she dipped him into the river, inadvertently leaving that single heel vulnerable, a detail that would later define the term Achilles' heel as a metaphor for a critical vulnerability. As Greece's mightiest warriors rallied to reclaim Helen and confront Troy, Thetis, driven by a mother's instinct to protect, concealed Achilles on the island of Skyros, disguising him among the women there to keep him from the war's clutches. Yet it was Diomedes and Odysseus, known for their wit and resourcefulness, who pierced this veil of secrecy. Their strategy involved offering gifts to the women of Skyros, among them a set of armor intended to lure Achilles from his disguise. The plan reached its climax when Odysseus sounded a war horn, a call to arms that scattered the women but revealed Achilles, who, undaunted, cast aside his guise and donned the armor, signaling his readiness for battle. With his spirit ignited, Achilles rallied Patroclus, his closest comrade, joining forces with Diomedes and Odysseus to journey back to Sparta, gearing up for the impending conflict. Achilles entered the Trojan War not merely as a participant, but as a living embodiment of Greek martial excellence. Trained by the centaur Chiron, Achilles was more than a mere warrior. He was a hero in the truest sense, his presence on the battlefield a testament to the Greeks' highest martial ideals. This coalition of forces, united by the cause of retrieving Helen and avenging the insult to Menelaus, prepared to set sail for Troy. But the Achaeans had some divine help on their side. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, sided with the Greeks as she was offended by the events of the Judgement of Paris, where Paris awarded the golden apple to Aphrodite over Athena and Hera, deeming her the fairest. This slight against her honor and wisdom was a catalyst for Athena's support of the Greeks. Hera's support for the Greeks in the Trojan War also stemmed from the deep-seated grievances originating from the Judgement of Paris. This act of rejection ignited Hera's enduring wrath against Troy. fueling her determination to see its downfall. But beyond her personal vendetta, Hera's involvement in the war reflected her role as the goddess of marriage and queenship, embodying the sanctity of marriage vows that Paris had violated by abducting Helen. This affront to marital fidelity and the order of the Greek social fabric further justified Hera's animosity towards Troy and her support for the Achaean cause. Poseidon too chose to support the Achaeans during the Trojan War because of betrayal by the city of Troy itself. The god of the sea, along with Apollo, had once labored to construct the formidable walls of Troy, a task undertaken under the promise of fair compensation from Laomedon, the Trojan king at the time. However, once the work was completed, Poseidon was deceitfully denied his rightful reward. To make matters worse, the Trojans selected Apollo as their patron deity, overlooking Poseidon despite his significant contributions to their city's defenses. This choice was perceived by Poseidon as a final affront, disregarding his might and the pivotal role he played in securing the city's architectural majesty. The Trojans' preference for Apollo over Poseidon not only deepened the god's animosity, but also positioned him firmly against Troy in the impending conflict. As the Greek fleet gathered, ready to set sail for Troy, an unnerving stillness took hold. The waters were eerily calm, and the winds, once favorable, ceased entirely. This sudden halt in their progress was not a mere whim of nature, but the wrath of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and wilderness. Agamemnon, leader of the Greek forces, had inadvertently provoked her fury by slaying a deer sacred to her in a boastful claim of surpassing her in hunting skill. In retaliation, Artemis stilled the winds and calmed the waters, anchoring the fleet and preventing their departure to Troy. Faced with this divine impediment, Agamemnon sought the counsel of a prophet to discern the cause of their misfortune. The revelation was as shocking as it was heart-wrenching. The only way to appease Artemis and regain favor for their journey was for Agamemnon to sacrifice his eldest daughter, Iphigenia. The demand placed Agamemnon in a dire moral quandary, torn between his duty as a father and his obligation to lead the Greeks to war. This harrowing decision was not made lightly. It was enveloped in a complex tapestry of deceit, as Agamemnon concocted a ruse to bring Iphigenia to Alus under the pretense of marrying Achilles, a deception that would ensure her presence at the sacrificial altar. The air was thick with tension as the ritual unfolded, and Agamemnon ultimately submitted to the divine command to appease Artemis. There are several accounts of this part of the legend. Some say that as Iphigenia was led to the altar, she was replaced by a deer at the last moment by Artemis, spared from death, while others recount the completion of the grim sacrifice, with Agamemnon plunging a dagger into his daughter's heart on the sacrificial altar. Regardless, Artemis's anger was quelled. Miraculously, the winds began to stir, and the once motionless waters surged with life, signaling the goddess's forgiveness and allowing the Achaean fleet to embark on their journey. With the sails billowing and the ships cutting through the waves, the Greek fleet advanced towards Troy, propelled not just by the wind, but by a somber resolve. The sacrifice, while a dark omen, also served as a catalyst for unity among the Achaeans, binding them with a shared sense of purpose and a collective yearning for redemption. The term Achaeans refers to one of the earliest known groups of people who lived in Greece and is mentioned frequently in Homer's Illiad and Odyssey as participants in the Trojan War. In the context of Homer's epics, Achaeans is used interchangeably with Greeks, and other terms like Danaans and Argives to describe the Greek forces besieging Troy. In terms of historical chronology, the Achaeans are indeed considered one of the precursors to classical Greek civilization. They are often associated with the Mycenaean civilization, which flourished in the Late Bronze Age, roughly between 1600 BCE and 1100 BCE. This civilization is named after Mycenae, one of the most important city-states, and is known for its significant archaeological sites, including palaces and tombs that have provided insight into its culture and society. After the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization around 1100 BCE, Greece entered a period known as the Dark Ages, from which emerged the classical Greek culture of the Archaic and Classical periods. Therefore, while Achaeans in the context of Homeric epics are synonymous with Greeks, historically, the Achaeans predate the classical Greek civilization by several centuries, representing an earlier phase of Greek history. As the Greek armada set its course towards Troy, they were destined to face Troy's own heroes, among whom Hector, son of King Priam and Queen Hecuba, was the most formidable. Hector, the crown prince of Troy, was not only celebrated for his exceptional prowess on the battlefield, but also revered as a symbol of Trojan honor, courage, and unwavering commitment to his homeland. Paris, brother to Hector, is a figure of contrasts. His decision to abscond with Helen, the Queen of Sparta, under the spell of love and divine promise, set the stage for the Trojan War, embedding him at the heart of the conflict that would define an era. At the helm of Troy's fate, presiding over the intricate mosaic of human ambition and conflict, stands King Priam, the city's venerable monarch. His tenure as ruler is distinguished not only by his sagacious leadership, but also by a profound sense of foreboding, a shadow of inevitable tragedy that seems to envelop the city under his watch. Priam's reign, steeped in the wisdom accrued over years of governance, is simultaneously marred by the heartache of a father and king who foresees the dire consequences of the war ignited by his son's actions. Aeneas too joined the side of the Trojan army. Born to the goddess Aphrodite and the mortal Anchises, Aeneas was not only a demigod graced with divine favor, but also a blood relative of the Trojan royal family, marking his alliance to Troy as personal as it was predestined. Beyond Aeneas, Troy's defense was bolstered by a host of allies, each bringing their own strengths and stories to the fore, united in their resolve to protect the city from the encroaching Greek forces. The Lycians stood as pivotal allies to Troy, their contribution underpinned by the valor and leadership of two remarkable figures, Sarpedon and Glaucus. Hailing from the rugged landscapes of Lycia, this group brought formidable strength to the Trojan defenses, their commitment to the cause stemming from a combination of loyalty and shared opposition to the Greek forces. Sarpedon, a son of Zeus and Laomedea, thus making him a grandson of the legendary hero Bellerophon, was distinguished not only by his divine parentage, but also by his unwavering resolve in battle. This lineage imbued him with a sense of destiny and honor, driving him to fight valiantly in defense of Troy, a city not his own by birth, but protected as if it were. Alongside Sarpedon, Glaucus's leadership was characterized by both courage and a deep sense of kinship with his men, inspiring them to feats of heroism in the face of overwhelming odds. Troy's alliance was further strengthened by the assistance of the Amazons, a formidable force of warrior women led by Penthesilea. These women, celebrated for their martial prowess and independence, hailed from the fringes of the known world, where they established a society that revered the art of war and the virtues of freedom and equality among its members. Originating from the region that would later be known as Scythia, The Amazons were renowned for their skills in horseback riding, archery, and combat, making them unparalleled in open battle. The Amazon warriors, bound by a code that prioritized the welfare of their community and the glory of battle, ventured into the Trojan War not just as mercenaries, but as bearers of their own legacy and honor. Under Penthesileia's leadership, they sought to prove their valor on a stage as grand as the Siege of Troy, aiming to carve their names alongside the greatest heroes of the age. And of course, gods also sided with the Trojans. Aphrodite's allegiance to Troy was sealed when Paris adjudged her the epitome of beauty. This act of favoritism bound her in a pact of loyalty to both Paris and, by extension, to the city of Troy itself. In keeping with her promise, she stood unwaveringly by the Trojans, safeguarding Paris and lending her divine support to other Trojan champions. Apollo's support for the Trojans stemmed from multiple layers of mythological lore and divine dynamics. Apollo's son, Troilus, was a young Trojan prince whose fate became intertwined in the city's destiny. And Apollo was revered in Troy, where he was worshipped not only for his divine patronage in areas such as healing and prophecy, but also for his historical support in the construction of Troy's mighty walls, alongside Poseidon. Ares, too, sided with the Trojans in the war. As a deity who thrives in the chaos and valor of combat, Ares was drawn to the conflict by the prospects of war itself, but also by personal and familial ties within the divine realm. This pantheon of characters, mortal and divine, shapes the narrative of the Trojan War into a multifaceted exploration of heroism, honor, and the capricious nature of fate. In the shadowed prelude of Homer's epic poem, the Illiad, the air hangs heavy with anticipation and the scent of impending conflict as Agamemnon and Achilles find themselves at odds. The contention between Achilles, the Achaeans' most formidable warrior, and Agamemnon, their supreme commander, stemmed from two war prizes, Chryseis and Briseis, who were captured by the Achaeans during their raids on Trojan allied towns. Chryseis, the daughter of a priest of Apollo, Croesus, was awarded to Agamemnon, while Briseis was given to Achilles as a mark of honor for his contributions to the Achaean war effort. Croesus, desperate to secure the return of his daughter, Chryseis, approaches the Achaean encampment, bearing a ransom of untold wealth, hoping to appeal to Agamemnon's sense of greed or mercy. He presents himself before the Greeks, offering gold and precious treasures in exchange for his daughter's freedom, invoking Apollo's name and beseeching the Achaeans to respect the god's will. Agamemnon, unmoved by the priest's pleas and the offered ransom, harshly denies Croesus' request. He dismisses the distraught father with threats, exacerbating the insult to both Croesus and Apollo. Distraught yet undeterred, Croesus turns to his divine patron for justice. He prays fervently to Apollo, beseeching the god to avenge the dishonor inflicted upon them by the Greeks. Moved by his priest's devotion and the injustice of the situation, Apollo heeds Croesus' call. From the heights of Olympus, he unleashes a deadly plague upon the Achaean camp. For 9 days, the god's arrows rain down disease and death, decimating the ranks of the Greek soldiers and filling the camp with the wails of the mourning and the stench of death. The plague serves as a grim reminder of the gods' power and their involvement in mortal affairs, prompting a crisis among the Achaean leadership. Agamemnon, faced with the escalating death toll and the growing unrest among his troops, is compelled to consult the seer Calchas to divine the cause of Apollo's wrath. Calchas, weary of revealing the truth in the presence of Agamemnon, eventually discloses that the only way to appease the god and end the plague is to return Chryseis to her father without ransom or conditions. Reluctantly, Agamemnon agrees to Caucasus' counsel, returning Chryseis, understanding that the welfare of his forces and the success of their campaign hinge upon placating Apollo. The return of Chryseis to Croesus, facilitated by a ceremonial procession and offerings to Apollo, finally lifts the plague, allowing the Greeks to once again focus on the siege of Troy. What happens next is a pivotal event in Homer's Iliad, setting the stage for much of the epic's drama and character development. This conflict, known as the quarrel, occurs early in the narrative, specifically in Book 1, and its repercussions echo throughout the Trojan War story. Agamemnon, finding himself without a prize, declares that he will take Briseis, Achilles' spoil of war, as his own to replace Chryseis. This decision is not only a matter of personal honor, but also a demonstration of power and authority over Achilles and the Achaean forces. Achilles sees Agamemnon's demand as a grave insult to his honor and contribution to the Greek cause. Feeling dishonored and enraged by Agamemnon's actions, Achilles withdraws from the fighting, refusing to participate further in the war effort. Achilles feels deeply wronged and his valor as a warrior taken for granted. He turns to his mother Thetis with a plea born of both wrath and sorrow. He seeks not just vindication, but a tangible demonstration of his worth, far beyond the accolades of men. In his heart, a scheme takes root, a divine intervention that would tilt the scales of the war decidedly against the Greeks, thereby exposing the depth of Agamemnon's error in slighting him. Thetis, moved by the plight of her son and the righteousness of his cause, ascends to Olympus, approaching Zeus with a request. She asks Zeus, the king of the gods, to lend his omnipotent support to the Trojans, to cast his favor upon them until Achilles' absence from the battlefield is keenly felt by the Achaeans, until they recognize the folly of their ways and the indispensable role Achilles plays in their conquests. Zeus, though bound by intricate ties of loyalty and the delicate balance of divine politics, accedes to Thetis' plea. His nod, a silent yet monumentous decree, sets the heavens and the earth on a new course. With Zeus's assent, the fate of the Trojan War shifts. The battlefield becomes a stage for the gods' will, with Zeus subtly manipulating the conflict to ensure Trojan victories. The once inevitable Achaean forces suffer setback after setback, their morale plummeting as heroes fall, and the shadow of defeat looms large. The absence of Achilles, once a mere grievance among many, now emerges as a critical flaw in the Greek war effort, a gap that cannot be filled by sheer force or will alone. The war, now in its 10th year, finds a brief moment of potential resolution that might spare the warriors further bloodshed. In a moment that sought to pivot the entire course of the Trojan War, a singular duel was proposed. This wasn't merely a test of strength between two warriors, but would also carry the weight of deciding the war's outcome. On one side stood Paris, the Trojan prince who bears the weight of his choices, for his love for Helen had sparked the war itself. And across from him was Menelaus, Helen's aggrieved husband. Menelaus stands clad in bronze, a visage of righteous fury and wounded honor. Under the watchful eyes of both armies, the two men took to the field, their duel framed by the solemn agreement that Helen and the victory she symbolized would belong to the winner. This was to be a moment of reckoning, a chance to end the conflict that had drawn gods and men alike into its vortex of destiny and despair, ending the war without further bloodshed. As they clash, The contrast between Menelaus' seasoned might and Paris's youthful vigor paints a vivid tableau of personal vendetta against the backdrop of divine machinations. Menelaus, fueled by betrayal and the longing for his stolen wife, dominates the duel, his prowess as a warrior undiminished by the years of conflict. Paris, for all his divine favor and the love that spurred him to risk everything, finds himself faltering under Menelaus' relentless assault. Just as victory seems within grasp, as Menelaus' hand is poised to deal the final blow, the fabric of reality shifts. Aphrodite, goddess of love and patron of Paris, intervenes with divine subtlety, whisking Paris away from the brink of death and back to the safety of Troy's walls. This act of divine intervention shatters the fragile truce, the hope for a simple resolution dissipating like smoke on a battlefield. Upon Paris's miraculous return to Troy, Paris is reunited with Helen. This moment, charged with complexity, lays bare the emotional and moral intricacies underpinning their relationship and the war itself. Helen, witnessing Aphrodite's intervention that spared Paris, confronts the realities of their situation. She's disgusted that Paris ran away from battle with her husband, and she realizes her abduction from Sparta, the ensuing war ravaging both armies, and the lives lost over what many have deemed her betrayal were all because of Aphrodite and Paris's decisions. Nevertheless, Aphrodite ensures Helen's compliance with her desires, compelling her to join Paris despite Helen's reservations and the lingering guilt she harbors for her role in the conflict. This union is not one of unbridled joy, but rather a poignant reminder of the personal and collective costs of their choices. Helen, though critical of Paris's actions and the cowardice he displayed on the battlefield, finds herself once again ensnared by the dictates of gods and men, reflecting on the path that led her from Sparta to Troy and the shadow her decision has cast over the Trojan skyline. The war had raged for 10 long years, with neither side securing a decisive victory. However, the tide seemed to turn with Hector leading his forces with unparalleled valor and the favor of the gods. Under his command, the Trojans managed to breach the previously impenetrable Greek defenses, pushing the battle to the shores where the Greek ships lay anchored. This strategic advance threatened not just the Greek camp, but their hope of return, making the battle a desperate fight for survival. The Trojans, driven by divine favor from Apollo and Ares and Hector's leadership, surged towards the Achaean encampment, targeting the Greek ships anchored at the shoreline. The stakes were clear. These ships were not only the Greeks' lifeline to their homeland, providing essential supplies and the promise of return, but also their final defense in a foreign land. The loss of the ships would spell certain defeat for the Greek forces, trapping them in Troy with no hope of escape. As the battle reached the beach, the intensity of the conflict escalated sharply. Greek warriors, fully aware of what was at risk, mounted a fierce resistance. Every ship became a battleground, with both sides engaging in brutal combat. The air was thick with the din of clashing metal, shouts of defiance, and the grim toll of casualties. Heroes from both camps distinguished themselves in the fray. On the Trojan side, Hector led charge after charge, his figure a beacon for Trojan aggression. For the Greeks, Ajax and Teucer stood out, repelling Trojan assaults with a combination of brute strength and deadly archery. Yet the shadow of Achilles' absence loomed large. The greatest Greek warrior remained at his tent, his personal grievance with Agamemnon keeping him from the fight. Yet just as the Greeks teetered on the brink of catastrophe, with their ships, and their hope of survival under siege. Athena, goddess of wisdom and warfare, descended to the battlefield, her aegis casting fear into the hearts of the Trojans and instilled in the Greeks a renewed sense of purpose and tactical ingenuity. Her presence emboldened heroes like Ajax the Great and Diomedes. Ajax, towering and formidable, became an unyielding bulwark against the Trojan advance. With every swing of his massive spear, he pushed back the enemy, his actions as if guided by Athena herself, turning the tide near the ships where the battle was most fierce. His defense was not just a display of brute strength, but a strategic counter to the Trojans' fiery ambition. Diomedes, a cunning warrior who found his prowess magnified under Athena's watchful gaze, moved through the Trojans with lethal precision, exploiting gaps in their ranks and sowing chaos. His courage was infectious, rallying the Greek soldiers to mount a spirited defense that blunted the Trojan assault and inflicted heavy casualties. Patroclus was moved by the plight of his comrades and the stubborn inaction of Achilles, so he decided to make a difference. Patroclus approached Achilles, asking for his permission to wear the iconic armor that was a symbol of the might and fear Achilles commanded among the Trojans. This act of impersonation was strategic, aimed at deceiving the Trojans into believing that Achilles had rejoined the battle, thereby boosting the morale of the Greek forces and instilling panic in the enemy ranks. Dressed in the guise of Achilles, Patroclus led the Myrmidons with unparalleled fervor, charging into the heart of the battle. His assault was not merely an act of bravery, but a calculated move to push the Trojans back, safeguarding the Greek ships from imminent destruction. Under his leadership, the Myrmidons inflicted severe casualties on the Trojan forces, including the death of Sarpedon, Zeus's son, marking a significant moment in the conflict. The battlefield, however, is a realm where fate's threads are entangled with the whims of the gods. Apollo, siding with the Trojans, intervened, striking Patroclus with a disorienting blow. This divine act marked the beginning of Patroclus's downfall. Weakened and vulnerable, he was soon wounded by Euphrobius, setting the stage for his final confrontation with Hector. Hector engaged Patroclus in combat. Thinking he was Achilles, Hector dealt the fatal blow to Patroclus on the battlefield, a moment that would reverberate through the annals of the war. As Patroclus lay dying on Trojan soil, a poignant and prophetic exchange unfolded between him and Hector. Hector leaned down to remove Achilles' helmet, only to see it was not Achilles at all. With his final breaths, Patroclus foretold a grim future for Hector, declaring that his end was near and would come at the hands of Achilles. This prophecy was not merely the dying words of a fallen warrior, but a harbinger of a pivotal shift in the trajectory of the Trojan War. It underscored the deeply intertwined fates of these characters, setting the stage for the dramatic events that would follow. In the aftermath of his duel with Patroclus, Hector stripped the fallen hero of Achilles' distinctive armor, claiming it as war spoils. This act, while customary in the context of ancient warfare, held profound symbolic weight. The armor, renowned across both camps for its divine craftsmanship and association with Achilles, was a tangible representation of the might and valor of the Greeks' greatest warrior. By donning Achilles' armor, Hector not only sought to claim a psychological victory over his adversaries, but also inadvertently marked himself the target of Achilles' vengeance. Achilles, estranged from the war due to his feud with Agamemnon, remains in his camp alongside the seashore, unaware of the dire events transpiring on the battlefield. The moment of revelation comes in a heartrending scene when Antiochus, a fellow warrior and friend, is tasked with bringing the grievous news to Achilles. The narrative captures the profound grief that overtakes Achilles upon learning of Patroclus' demise. A loss that transcends the boundaries of friendship, touching the core of his being. His anguished cries fill the air, reaching the ears of Thetis, his divine mother, who resides in the depths of the ocean. Thetis, moved by the depth of her son's sorrows, swiftly ascends from her watery realm to comfort Achilles. She finds him overwhelmed by grief, lamenting the loss of Patroclus and the role his own pride played in this tragedy. Thetis, though sharing in her son's sorrow, also brings a sense of purpose and resolve. She promises Achilles a new set of armor, forged by the divine blacksmith Hephaestus himself, recognizing that her son's return to battle is inevitable and that he must be equipped for the challenges that lie ahead. The creation of Achilles' new armor is a moment of exquisite detail and significance in the Iliad. Thetis travels to Olympus, beseeching Hephaestus to craft a set of armor that befits her son's heroic status. Hephaestus, moved by Thetis' plea and the compelling narrative of the war's toll on the Greeks, agrees. What follows is a meticulous depiction of divine craftsmanship as Hephaestus forges armor of unparalleled beauty and strength, including a shield that encapsulates the breadth of human experience and the cosmos itself, symbolizing Achilles' connection to both mortal and divine realms. With the new armor complete, Thetis returns to Achilles, bearing the divine gifts from Hephaestus. This moment is charged with a mix of anticipation and solemnity, as Achilles is presented with the armor that signifies his re-engagement with his fate. The armor, gleaming and imbued with the craftsmanship of the gods, represents not just protection, but also the weight of destiny, heralding Achilles' return to the battlefield to seek vengeance for Patroclus' death and fulfill his legacy as the greatest warrior of the Greeks. As Thetis departs, leaving Achilles with a new divine armor, the mood at the Greek camp shifts from despair to a cautious optimism. The warriors, witnessing the return of their champion in armor that radiates the glory and favor of the gods, feel a renewed sense of purpose and hope. Achilles, now fully clad in his resplendent gear, calls for an assembly of the Greek forces, where he publicly reconciles with Agamemnon, putting their past grievances aside for the greater good of their cause. This reconciliation marks a crucial moment of unity for the Greeks, galvanizing their spirits and reinforcing their ranks for the battles that lie ahead. With his resolve hardened and his purpose clear, Achilles leads a renewed offensive against the Trojans, who have been momentarily buoyed by their successes at the Greek ships. The Trojans, hearing of Achilles' return and seeing the fearsome warrior clad in armor that seemed to shine like the sun itself, are struck with terror, their morale shaken by the prospect of facing him in battle once more. The battlefield becomes a stage for Achilles' wrath and grief as he cuts through the Trojan lines with unmatched ferocity, his every move driven by the desire to avenge Patroclus. With Achilles back in the fight, spearheading the Greek warriors and bolstered by divine aid, forced the Trojans back. The Greeks managed to secure their ships, saving their fleet from destruction and preserving their hope of victory. This moment marked a crucial juncture in the war, demonstrating the precarious balance of fortune and the indomitable spirit of the besieged Greeks. The Trojans, despite their initial successes and the brinkmanship of nearly setting the Greek fleet ablaze, found themselves repelled by the resurgent Achaean defenders. The Greeks not only managed to prevent the destruction of their ships, but also restored a semblance of stability to their defensive position. Following the tumultuous Battle of the Ships, a brief respite falls over the battlefield. This pause, however, is laden with anticipation, for both camps understand that the war's decisive moment is yet to come. The Greeks, their ships secured and their morale bolstered by Achilles' presence, now stand ready for the next phase of conflict, their sights set on the Trojan forces that had dared to press so close to victory. Achilles stands a figure reborn from the ashes of grief for his fallen friend Patroclus. His resolve is crystal clear, his singular aim to confront Hector, the Trojan prince whose hands are stained with the blood of Patroclus. The air is thick with the sense of an impending clash of fates as Achilles steps forth from the ranks of the Greek army, his eyes scanning the horizon for his nemesis. The Trojans, on the other hand, are pulled back within the city's formidable walls. Hector, however, remains outside, compelled by honor and a sense of destiny to face Achilles. Despite pleas from his family and warnings of his impending doom, Hector's decision is irrevocable, driven by the warrior's code and the looming shadow of fate that dictates the course of heroes. As Achilles and Hector face each other, the battlefield becomes a stage for a confrontation steeped in myth and the raw emotions of revenge, honor, and the inevitable march of destiny. Before their clash, a dramatic chase ensues around the walls of Troy, with Achilles pursuing Hector, who initially seeks to negotiate his fate, or at least face it with honor. However, the intervention of the gods, particularly Athena, deceives Hector into standing his ground and facing Achilles. Achilles, propelled by a rage that is both personal and primal, engages Hector with a ferocity that seems to echo the wrath of the gods themselves. Their duel is fierce, but ultimately one-sided, as Achilles is fueled by divine support and a relentless thirst for retribution. Hector, realizing the end is near, requests that his body be returned to Troy for proper funeral rites, a plea that Achilles coldly denies. With a swift and deadly strike, Achilles avenges Patroclus, ending Hector's life and sealing one of the most poignant moments of the Trojan War. After Achilles killed Hector, he desecrated the Trojan hero's body by dragging it behind his chariot around the tomb of Patroclus for several days. This brutal mistreatment of Hector's body did more than shock the onlookers. It deeply offended the divine spectators, drawing the ire of the gods themselves. Zeus decreed that Hector's body should be returned to his family for a proper funeral. In one of the most moving scenes of the Iliad, Hermes escorts King Priam safely into the Greek camp to beg Achilles for the return of his son's body. Touched by the king's plea and reminded of his own father, Achilles agreed to return Hector's body to the Trojans. This act of mercy allowed for a moment of shared humanity and mutual respect between the two grieving parties. Achilles also agreed to a temporary truce for the duration of Hector's funeral rites. Hector's body was returned to Troy, where he was mourned by his family and the citizens of the city. The Iliad concludes with Hector's funeral, which took place over 9 days of mourning. Following the mourning period, Hector was cremated and his ashes were entombed with honor. But for the story of the Trojan War saga, more tragedy was to come, which comes to us from other ancient texts, most notably the Aeneid by Virgil, the Posthomerica by Quintus Smyrnius, as well as various mythological traditions. As the Trojan War raged on, Achilles' name became synonymous with the might of the Greek forces, his valor and wrath, turning the tide of battle time and time again. However, his invincibility on the battlefield, a gift from the gods, could not shield him from the fate foretold by prophecy. The narratives surrounding the demise of Achilles vary across various ancient texts, yet the account that has captured the imagination through the ages involves a blend of mortal skill and divine intervention. Achilles, emboldened by his string of victories and the seeming invulnerability granted by his mother's efforts, slaughtered Trojan warriors one by one as he made his way to the Scaean gates, part of Troy's formidable defenses. It was here, away from the chaotic heart of battle, that fate conspired to bring about his end. Paris, who was not Achilles' equal in direct combat, had the gods on his side. Guided by Apollo, Paris took up his bow. This was no mere act of warfare, but a divine execution. As Achilles moved, perhaps momentarily distracted by the battle's din or the weight of his thoughts, Apollo directed Paris's aim to the singular point of Achilles' mortality, his heel. This vulnerability, a legacy of Thetis' attempt to make her son immortal by dipping him in the river Styx, had remained his only weakness. The arrow, released from Paris's bow, flew with more than human accuracy, its path corrected by Apollo's will. It found its mark on Achilles' heel, piercing it with lethal precision. The impact, though seemingly minor, was devastating. Achilles, struck by an injury that would have been inconsequential to any other, was struck down, his strength ebbing away as the realization of his mortality dawned upon him. In this moment, near the walls that he had sought to breach, Achilles met his end. Not in a glorious melee, but through the intersection of divine will and a hidden weakness, forever cementing the legend of his invincibility and his singular vulnerability. Yet Paris would not live long enough to enjoy his victory over Achilles. The Greeks witnessed him execute Achilles. They hunted him down and swiftly took their revenge. Achilles' death sent shockwaves through the Greek ranks, casting a pall of despair over the warriors who had looked to him as their greatest champion. His body was retrieved and mourned with profound ceremonies, and his funeral games became the stuff of legend, celebrated in epic poetry. In the wake of Achilles' tragic end, the saga of the Trojan War culminates in its most ingenious and memorable chapter: the conception and execution of the Trojan horse. This masterstroke of military strategy, emblematic of intellect's triumph over brute force, would indelibly alter the annals of mythological conflict. As the Trojan War lingered on, with both the Greek and Trojan forces battered by the relentless tide of war, a novel strategy emerged from the mind of Odysseus. Celebrated for his wit and strategic foresight, Odysseus proposed a plan audacious in its simplicity and devastating in its potential. The plan was the Trojan horse, a ploy that epitomizes the ancient adage, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts." Under the astute direction of Odysseus, the Greeks undertook the construction of an immense wooden horse. This architectural marvel was no ordinary siege engine, but a vessel of victory, housing within its hollow structure a select group of Achaean warriors. Among these were not only Odysseus himself, but Pyrrhus, bearing the legacy of his father Achilles, Diomedes, the formidable tactician, and Menelaus, whose personal vendetta against Paris and Troy had sparked the inferno of war. These warriors, concealed within the wooden facade, were the linchpin of the Greeks' last gambit for victory. Simultaneously, the Greek forces enacted a retreat so convincing it would seal Troy's fate. They dismantled their encampment and sailed their ships beyond the horizon, leaving behind only the enigmatic offering of the Trojan horse at the gates of Troy. This gesture, ostensibly a peace offering to the gods for a safe return home, preyed upon the Trojans' curiosity and their yearning for the war's end. As the wooden behemoth stood ominously at Troy's gates, it was heralded not merely as a symbol of Greek defeat, but as a divine offering to Athena, ostensibly to secure the Greeks a favorable voyage home. This monumental horse, a marvel of craftsmanship and deceit, ignited a wave of premature triumph among the Trojan populace, weary from the protracted siege. Yet amidst this chorus of celebration, two voices of caution arose. Laocoon, a priest of Poseidon, and Cassandra, a princess of Troy, gifted with a curse of true prophecies that no one would believe. With a clarity born of his reverence for the gods and understanding of Greek cunning, Laocoon implored his fellow Trojans to see beyond the surface. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts, he famously cautioned, attempting to puncture the veil of optimism that had enveloped Troy. Cassandra, a princess of Troy endowed with the gift of prophecy by Apollo, faced a fate no less tragic. Despite her divine gift, she was burdened with a curse that rendered her insights futile. Her accurate foretellings were doomed to be disbelieved by those around her. On that fateful day, she too raised her voice against the acceptance of the Trojan horse. Her warnings imbued with the desperation of one who sees the future, yet is powerless to alter its course. Cassandra's pleas, vivid with the imagery of Troy's impending doom, echoed the depth of her torment. Knowing the truth of the Greek deception, but unable to sway the hearts and minds of her people. Their warnings fell on deaf ears. Clouded by the Trojans' relief and desire for victory, they brought the horse into the heart of the city. Believing the horse to be a divine symbol of their victory and the end of the 10-year siege, a night of celebrations ensued. The citizens of Troy, relieved and jubilant over what they perceived as the departure of the Greek forces and their own apparent triumph, gave themselves over to festivities. This period of celebration was marked by feasting and revelry, as the Trojans congratulated themselves on outlasting the Greeks and looked forward to peace after a decade of conflict. The celebratory atmosphere, however, was laced with tragic irony. Unbeknownst to the Trojans, the Greek soldiers were hidden inside the horse, waiting for the city to be consumed by sleep and the revelries to die down. And so, night fell, and with it, the doom of Troy. Under the cloak of darkness, the Greek warriors, concealed within the horse, emerged. The first task was to signal the waiting Greek forces. According to some accounts, this was done either through a prearranged signal or by lighting a beacon. Once the signal was seen, the Greek fleet, which had hidden at Tenedos, not far from Troy, made its way back to the shore, ready to execute the next phase of their plan. Pyrrhus, Diomedes, Menelaus, and the other Greek warriors that had emerged from the horse moved quickly to the city gates, slaughtering any guards in their way. They then opened the gates, and the Greek army poured into the city, initiating a night of terror and destruction, looting homes and slaughtering anyone in their way. The attack was brutal and comprehensive. Greek soldiers, fueled by years of war and the promise of this final assault leading to victory, showed little mercy. Houses were set ablaze, and the once celebratory streets of Troy became scenes of chaos and slaughter. The Trojans, caught completely off guard, were unable to mount a coordinated defense. Many were killed in their sleep. others while they attempted to flee or defend their families and homes. By dawn, Troy was in ruins. The city that had withstood a 10-year siege was decimated in a single night. The Greeks achieved their long-sought victory, and the once mighty Troy was reduced to ashes and rubble. Its people were either slain, enslaved, or left to mourn amidst the ruin of their city. The Greek warriors made sure to seek out any Trojan leaders they could find to ensure that those who could potentially rally a defense were quickly eliminated. Priam, the king of Troy, met his end at the altar of Zeus. Pyrrhus, Achilles' son, drove a dagger into the king's heart. Pyrrhus then headed to the royal chambers, where he found Hector's wife and son. Pyrrhus ripped Astyanax from Andromache's arms and threw the infant to his death. He then took Andromache into slavery, where he would force her to serve as his concubine. Cassandra sought refuge within the sanctity of Athena's temple, hoping to find safety from the carnage unfolding outside. However, her attempt to escape the violence of the war was thwarted when Ajax the Lesser observed her hurried movements towards the temple and followed her. Inside the revered walls of Athena's temple, a place meant for worship and peace, Ajax the Lesser violently violated Cassandra right before the statue of the goddess Athena. This sacrilegious act deeply offended Athena, who could not overlook the desecration of her sacred space. In response to this blasphemy, when Ajax the Lesser set sail for his return voyage to Greece, Athena struck his ship with a thunderous bolt of lightning, throwing Ajax into the turbulent sea, where Poseidon pulled him down into a watery grave. However, Cassandra's ordeal was far from over. Following Ajax's demise, Agamemnon took her as his concubine and brought her back to his palace in Mycenae. This arrangement deeply angered Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, who was incensed at her husband's infidelity. Driven by jealousy and outrage, Clytemnestra seized an axe and mercilessly killed Cassandra in an act of revenge. Yet Cassandra was not the sole target of Clytemnestra's fury. The queen had harbored a deep resentment towards Agamemnon ever since he sacrificed their daughter Iphigenia to appease the gods and secure favorable winds for the Greek fleet. Seizing her moment of retribution, Clytemnestra waited until Agamemnon fell asleep, and then she entered his bedchamber and plunged her dagger into his heart, ensuring that the king met an end as tragic as the one he had ordained for their daughter. Among the handful of Trojans who managed to flee the burning city, Aeneas stood out as the most notable. Guiding a small band of survivors, Aeneas embarked on a long and perilous journey across the Mediterranean. Eventually, they reached the shores of Italy, where Aeneas and his group began to forge a new existence. In time, Aeneas's descendants would play a pivotal role in the annals of history. Romulus and Remus, born of his lineage, went on to establish a new city. That city was Rome, and it would rise to become a cornerstone of civilization, marking the beginning of a legacy that traced its roots back to the fallen city of Troy and the enduring spirit of Aeneas and his followers. After being reunited with Helen, Menelaus returned to Sparta, where he and Helen resumed their reign as king and queen. In time, when their earthly lives concluded, they transitioned to the afterlife, destined to spend eternity on the Isle of the Blessed, a realm reserved for heroes and the virtuous. Yet while some heroes found their way back home, and others embarked on new adventures, a unique and arduous odyssey was set to unfold for one man. Odysseus, renowned for his wit and ingenuity among the Greeks, whose 10-year journey back to Ithaca is recounted in the Odyssey, which unfolds with a series of harrowing episodes that underscore both his cunning and the relentless challenges posed by the divine. The fall of Troy marked the end of an era, a story that has been told and retold and has influenced countless works of art, literature, and philosophy. Yet for centuries, Troy and the Trojan War were regarded as nothing more than captivating stories, part of Greek mythology. But these tales held within them the seeds of truth, waiting to be discovered. The leap from myth to reality began in the 19th century. Heinrich Schliemann, a wealthy German businessman with a keen interest in archaeology, made it his mission to find Troy. His determination bridged the gap between legend and historical fact, setting the stage for one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of his time. Born in 1822 in Germany, Schliemann was a businessman who made his fortune in the indigo trade before turning his attention and considerable resources to archaeology. His belief in the historical accuracy of Homer's epics was unwavering, a conviction that led him to the Troad, the northwest region of modern-day Turkey, where he was determined to uncover the site of ancient Troy. Guided by the Homeric texts as his map, Schliemann set his sights on Hisarlik, a site that had been previously suggested as the location of Troy. In 1871, he began excavations, employing methods that by today's standards would be considered crude and destructive. Schliemann's approach was one of brute force. He used dynamite and large teams of laborers to quickly move through layers of earth, seeking the treasures he believed were buried below. Schliemann's efforts at Hisarlik led to the discovery of a series of ancient settlements built atop one another, revealing that the site had been inhabited and rebuilt over millennia. Among these layers, he identified what he believed to be the Homeric city of Troy, primarily based on the discovery of a fortified settlement and a cache of treasure that he famously dubbed Priam's treasure, after the king of Troy. This collection included gold, silver, copper, and other artifacts that Schliemann claimed dated back to the time of the Trojan War. However, Schliemann's identification of the layers and his association of the treasure with the Homeric Troy were later contested. Later archaeological work has shown that the treasure dates from a period earlier than the traditional dates ascribed to the Trojan War. And subsequent excavations have revealed not just one, but several cities built on top of each other, each representing a different period of habitation stretching back over 4,000 years. Archaeologists have since identified at least 9 major layers of Troy, with Troy 6 and 7a considered the most likely candidates for the Homeric city. These layers have revealed grand walls, imposing gates, and evidence of a city both wealthy and well fortified, fitting descriptions from the epic tales. Not only did Schliemann inaccurately identify the layers of Troy, his excavation techniques, which involved cutting through significant portions of the site, destroyed valuable historical evidence and have been subject of criticism by later archaeologists. Yet despite these controversies, the impact of Schliemann's work on the field of archaeology and our understanding of the ancient world cannot be overstated. His discoveries at Hisarlik provided the first concrete evidence that the cities described by Homer were not purely mythological, but had historical foundations. Schliemann's work ignited a scholarly debate that continues to this day regarding the historical accuracy of the Illiad and the Odyssey. Furthermore, Schliemann's excavations at Troy were among the first to capture the public imagination and bring the study of ancient civilizations into popular discourse. His work demonstrated the potential of archaeology to bridge the gap between legend and history, inspiring future generations of archaeologists to pursue the field with a sense of adventure and a dedication to uncovering the past. In retrospect, While Schliemann's methods were far from perfect, his contributions laid the groundwork for the modern archaeological exploration of Troy. His legacy is a testament to the enduring allure of ancient history and the human drive to connect with our distant past. Through his endeavors, the once great city of Troy was brought from the realm of myth into the light of historical inquiry, marking a monumental moment in the pursuit of understanding our shared human heritage. Today, Troy is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting scholars and tourists alike, each drawn to this place where stories from our distant past come to life. My interest in ancient history and archaeology began in a middle school exploratory Latin class, where I first encountered the narrative of the Trojan War. This initial exposure sparked a profound interest that guided my academic focus through subsequent years of education. In high school, I pursued Latin and classical studies, which further cemented my fascination with antiquity, which continued into my collegiate years at Rollins College, where I did my BA in classical studies and anthropology with a minor in archaeology. And in 2003, during my junior year of college, I was able to spend a semester in Greece, dedicated to examining Athens' ancient sites. This immersive experience offered a unique perspective on the Trojan War, enriching my understanding with the cultural and historical context of Greece. And in 2021, my long-standing fascination with the Trojan War culminated in a visit to the archaeological site of Troy. This visit was not only a personal pilgrimage, but an opportunity to engage directly with the physical remnants of a civilization that has long captivated my academic and personal interest. Standing amidst the ruins of Troy, I was able to connect my scholarly knowledge with tangible history, an experience that has profoundly deepened my appreciation for the complexities of archaeological interpretation and the enduring legacy of ancient narratives in shaping our understanding of the past. The story of Troy, from its mythological origins to its archaeological discovery, reminds us of the enduring power of human curiosity and our quest for understanding. It has reshaped our approach to history, inspiring generations to look beyond the myths and dig deeper into the truths that lie buried beneath the earth. But what do you think about Troy? Does it stand as a testament to the complexities of our past, bridging the gap between myth and reality? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. For more stories that bring history to life, make sure you check out this video next.